Namaskar, Nileshok, with another session of Dr. No Shorts. This would be number 15 in this series. And we will be looking at additional evidence for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka in 5525 BCE from around the world. Okay, archaeology evidence from around the world. And this time we are going to look at the seashore of United States, specifically at the mouth of Mississippi River, where it meets the Gulf of Mexico. Very interesting evidence. It corroborates 5525 BC beautifully. In fact, what I'm going to present in this paper, or rather in this shorts episode, is a summary or a combination of multiple research efforts. Okay, so multiple research data from multiple locations, not limited to the mouth of Mississippi, related to delta formations, related to the sea level rise, sudden sea level rise from the United States coast related to the Gulf of Mexico. So think of this as state of Mississippi, state of Louisiana, state of Texas. That may help you understand the geographical area we are looking at. And I said Mark Twain again, and then Krishna's Dwarka, okay? Well, what's that connection? Why do I say again? If you have watched the other episode, I think it's in a Shraddha and Prajna series, and it might not have been, So if you saw that episode where I have talked about a fascinating astronomy observation of a comet, Dhumaketu Maharghora Pushya Akramya Tishtati. Okay, a great comet that has settled near Nakshatra Pushya. And that simple observation has so many ramifications for, of course, the Mahabharata, but that's actually the minor piece, although the observation occurs in the Mahabharata. But the significant ramifications for the antiquity of Indian astronomy, but also the precision and sophistication, technological sophistication of Indian astronomy. Additionally, a deep tradition, not only the antiquity of Indian astronomy, of course, it has to go with the tradition, but a deep, sophisticated tradition of a documentation of certain planets, certain comets, their orbital periods, their locations in the sky as seen from the Earth, and the transfer of that documentation over generations. And when I talk of generations, I'm talking about thousands and thousands of years. In that context, I had quoted Mark Twain. He was born in 1835 when Halley's Comet, its apparition, it was close to the Earth, close to the sun, and therefore could be seen from the Earth. And Mark Twain had made a comment that, hey, I came with the Halley's Comet, and that is 1835, and the comet returns about every 75 years. And he said, I'm going to go back with Halley's Comet. That second apparition, consequent or subsequent second apparition, was anticipated in 1910. Guess what? That's exactly what happened. The apparition did occur. It could be seen from the Earth. And Mark Twain passed away, okay, right at that time, as he predicted, let's say. So now what's the connection of Mark Twain now? Well, it is his connection. If you have read his books, multiple books, all books, some of his books, you know his connection with the Mississippi River. One of his books, The Life on the Mississippi, of course, that's not the most famous, although this is very interesting, but you would know typically from the Tom Sawyers and whatnot. Anyway, so that's the Mississippi connection. I thought I'll just mention that. Otherwise, Mark Twain has nothing to do with Krishna's Dwarka. Okay, but surprise, surprise, the connection of a comet is very interesting. This was comet, what we call Halley's comet, was seen by Andhaka in 5622 BCE, and Andhaka included this comet along with 5 additional specific astronomy descriptions of the 5622 BCE, okay, about the month of March in the Julian calendar extended in the past. And he used this in the part of his Nimitta when he discussed the warning with Kamsa. And right then, just after this, Kamsa was killed. Okay, that was 5622 BC, and Bhagwan Krishna was 11 years old, as Srimad Bhagavad Puran tells us. So Mark Twain is connected with Krishna in that interesting way through the Andhaka comet or Halley's comet. And here, with the flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka, it's connected through the evidence we are going to look at from the river Mississippi. Okay, so that's the paper there, into geological survey, I think. All right. And so what are we seeing here? This is actually a composite graph, composite figure based on multiple studies. In fact, look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different studies. And what do you see? Okay, as if you look at the x-axis, that's the time going back to 12,000 BP. So last 10,000 years of data, the entire Holocene data is here. On the y-axis, we have the depth, of the ocean, or at the mouth of a river, given in meters, okay, relative to the mean sea level. And it's very important to remember that, because we cannot just take a raw sea level rise data and just carelessly and casually run and jump into conclusions. We have to look at other factors such as the land subsidence, whichever way you call it, okay, and make a correction if required. We have to perform sensitivity analysis. And by the way, some Sanskrit grammarians who only understand sensitivity analysis and immediately think of a linear programming, okay, for their benefit and for their followers. This sensitivity analysis is a concept. It is done using different tools. Linear programming can indeed be useful. Most of the time, depending on the nature of it, of course, it's just not required, okay? So it doesn't help to just throw a half-baked knowledge, to impress people. Well, ordinary people will be impressed, but I'm, of course, glad that people, these pro-Indic trolls, are courageous enough to put their name and a face together and state these things in research discussions group, in social media, because this provides a wonderful teaching, also learning opportunity for me, okay, as I communicate this wonderful evidence. So what do we see here? Of course, not just Holocene. The sea level is rising for last 20,000 years, the last part of Pleistocene and Holocene. So now that also means just because suddenly there is a sea level rise, we don't start shouting Krishna's Dwarka, and Krishna's Dwarka. But that is the kind of very naive, careless, and casual type of inferences made by many well-known archaeologists in the Indian context, and especially in the context of Krishna's Dwarka. As time permits, we will explore each one of them. But for now, bringing you back to the southern part of United States, this is the state of Louisiana. This is Mississippi River path, okay? Coming to Baton Rouge, is, as you may know, the university there. And then finally coming to New Orleans, okay? Most people know New Orleans very well too. Without going into the technicalities, because remember, all this kind of data, some researcher may choose to use a certain scientific parameter. Another researcher may use another parameter. And as I shared from Nyaya Darshana, when we draw a Anuman based on a Pratyaksha, the Anuman can be of such a kind that the actual Anuman, okay, may precede the evidence. Okay, sometime may follow the evidence and sometime it may be coincident with the evidence. Just simple examples would be you see the clouds and therefore you draw the Anuman inference that, oh, more than likely there is going to be a rain. So based on the cloud as the evidence, a prediction for the rain is made. Actual when the rain occurs and when the clouds were seen, you are going to see a gap in such a way that the prediction was made here, oh, it's going to rain, and actual rain happened sometime after that. In another case, you see the flood in the river and you say, oh, it must have rained. So the evidence, the actual pratyaksha you're seeing is the flood in the river. Say that's same now. And you're making a prediction. You're saying, oh, it rained. Now, when did it rain? It rained before the flood. Okay, so with the clouds, the actual prediction made happened afterwards. In looking at the flood in the river, the prediction for the rain made is actually happened before the evidence being the flood in the river. And sometimes the things will happen exactly coincident. This is one reason. Another one is the nature of evidence, the decay in the evidence, and all of this. And then the common cause variation, other special factor variations such as land subsidence. These all factors come into the picture. And for example, therefore, even now these plots are not exactly from the same location, but even made at the same location, and if a researcher chooses a different parameter, there can be some variation. But there cannot be a contradiction, or if the contradiction exists, usually we are not always successful immediately or never. Usually there is a causal reason why the variation occurs. Okay, the karya karana bhav. Anyway, so let's look at this. So look at the x-axis. Okay, so this is 8,000 before present, 4,000 before present. So if you have to take 5525 BCE, the year for the flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka, and connect it, where do we look at? We look at it about, so this is like a 4,000, 6,000 and 8,000. So we are looking at 7,000 somewhere here and 7,500, which is somewhere here. Okay, so I don't know if I have a line here. No, I don't. Okay, so if I would have drawn a line for 5525 BCE, that would occur somewhere here. Okay, so that will kind of represent these three or four, actually all 5 different studies here. Okay, all of them showing a very sharp focus for the lines that they have drawn. Okay, and think of this as a pulse or a catastrophic rise event number 3 that we saw in the West Indies. Now, why am I bringing West Indies here? Again, think of the connection of West Indies with the Gulf of Mexico, okay, relatively in the same area. But that's not even required, because this is a global phenomenon, and we have seen this in the Dwarka itself. We have seen this in Great Barrier Reef. We have seen this in the Gulf of Tonkin. I mean, you go anywhere, go to the northern part of the earth, okay, northern hemisphere, and we have seen it everywhere. All right. So here, essentially 5 studies, okay, related to the Gulf of Mexico and related to Mississippi, corroborating that catastrophic rise event 3 at 5525 BCE, okay, from Mississippi River area. Now, what I'm showing you here is that this is from this specific study. And very interesting, and I would encourage you to go and read this study. What they said is, oh, we did not, funny enough that they're presenting this data. I'm not saying funny, it's very interesting. And it's a bold conjecture they're making. They're saying, hey, all of these guys are seeing this sudden sea level rise. We don't. And what they mean by that is they, in the evidence they collected, they don't see it. And this is very interesting because this, what I'm showing you right now, is actually the evidence collected by the researchers of this paper. Okay, what they presented in the previous graph here is basically research of other researchers. Look at the dates, from 1960, 1991, 64, 74, 1970. So, spread over like 30 plus years, a very consistent data. Now, when these individuals, these researchers collected the data, not at the same location, another location, but in the area of a Mississippi. And for details, anyone can read the paper. They said, oh, we don't see evidence for sudden sea level rise in Holocene. Now, remember, depending on where you are measuring the data, some variation will occur. As I said, you have to become comfortable, not everything matching right on. And that variation is caused by many factors. I gave you one example, is the type of data used, whether the data is predicting something that's going to happen or something that already happened. And of course, then other special cause variation, such as, say, sea subsidence. And of course, the common cause variation. The different methods, the technology methods used to date these individual things, the ability of that equipment, ability or the capability or the sophistication of AMS, like accelerated mass spectrometry, any other methods that were used, and so on. What is interesting is when they are saying they don't see evidence of sudden sea level rise, guess what? I mean, not even going into the magnitudes or anything, the plot itself is such that if I just draw a tangent, through the data set, right? The way we do the regression curves, okay? Draw a line through the data set, okay? And a second data set, look what happens. So that intersection, and just see, I have done a decent job just visually, of course, looking through the center of that data set. Yeah, I get a point. Now, this point is where? This point is possibly like a 6,800, around 7,000 years ago, not like 7,500 years ago that we like to see. But that's not the issue. I mean, we have seen the different variations right in this previous graph here. Okay, I mean, right here, depending on which specific study you look at, you are going to find a variation, for example, say from even here, like 8,500 or whatever that 9,000 number would be, to this is 6,000, so to like a 6,500. Okay, but where is the mean position? We know that the mean position is right here somewhere around 7,000 before present, which is 5,000 BCE. Right. So this is very interesting because if you just do a simple visual data, by the way, in my corporate career, I used to do a lot of this simply using some of the basic tools as opposed to some complex statistical tool, is like plot the damn data, draw the tangents like this. This was developed a technique that not a new technique in statistics, but something that I took it to a new level. And even I'll not go into that. It's called variance thinking. Okay, so something like this. And so all you do is simply draw the tangents into the data, like draw the lines. And when the slope changes suddenly, something dramatic is happening. Now, the data itself will not tell you that, but data tells you where to go look for. Okay, so in this case, for example, this is that intersection, and you say, oh, what's specifically happening at 7,000 or whatever, that 6,800 BP and so on. Okay, so very interesting. Actually, yes, there is a evidence somewhere, say, look at it from the 8,000 before present. Okay, so that's like 6,000 BC to 6,800. Okay, think of it this like the data presented by Graham Hancock and Glenn Milne for the west coast of India. exactly at Gujarat, the Gulf of, I'm trying to think, the Gulf of Khambat, that area right for Dwarka. They said that particular island, they used the bathymetric data, a different kind of data. They said that particular island disappeared between 7,700 BP before present and 6,900 before present. Bring that comparison to here, so look at this, somewhere from 8,000 before present, compare that with 7,700 before present, and to what, 6,900, and here I'm talking about, say, 6,700, 6,800, 900, whatever that would be, BP, is that point. And that's where you have this sudden pulse. Even this pulse matches with what is shown by Graham Hancock and Glenn Milne at Dwarka in India. And we are talking here Mississippi. Okay? If you don't get goosebumps, you don't understand this stuff. Okay? Be impressed with amazing archaeology, empirical data from around the world. Okay? All right. Now what they did, very nice. They tried to make a correction. Now this is sensitivity analysis, by the way. They tried to make a correction based on the tectonic subsidence data. Now they did not have exact rate at which this was happening, some data to show that, hey, this is what they should use. So they use a hypothetical model. What if the subsidence is happening? This is again at the mouth of Mississippi, where it is meeting Gulf of Mexico, at say 1.1 millimeter per year or something. And so how the corrected data will look like. My point is, even the corrected data actually captures that sudden sea level rise. Okay. See, not only it captures sudden sea, I don't think I have drawn the tangents. No, but if I would have drawn a tangent, how it would have looked like? Actually, it would have looked like from here. Just look at my cursor here. So it would look like actually from say 3,000 BP, which is what, 1,000 BC, actually going up to what point? Say somewhere here around like a 5,500, which would be what, 3,500 BC. So from 3,500 BC to 1,000 BC, the water actually, the sea level, that's actually going down. Keep this in mind, a consistent sea level data around the world. Especially this is important for falsifying baseless claims of multiple individuals claiming Mahabharata war happened in 3000 BCE, that area, and then Krishna's Dwarka being destroyed 36 years after, whatever the date they claim. There are like 60 folks in that 3000 BC magical dogmatic area. Okay, but let's go backward. So now what happens? Now, so then again, you see like the sea level going up here between say, look at this as a 7,000 to say 5,500. Yeah, that's also very consistent. We see it around the world. Okay. So after 5525 BC, the water level did not stop there. Actually, it kept on going up. And we used that when we looked at Dwarka data to explain why places like Dholavira or Lothal were ports, active ports, beginning sometime 5,000, 4,000 BC. And they were that way until 2000 BC. And after that, again, the water is coming down. Also, combine that with the land subsidence, and they were no longer ports because the seawater was far away from their geographical location. But something else, look at this peak here. Okay, look at this peak. So if I draw a tangent here, okay, so the tangent will kind of, the point, the intersection point will end at 7,000. Where would be the peak of this tangent? Where would be the midpoint? Let's say not peak, midpoint of this sudden sea level rise. It will fall right at 7,500 BP, converted 5525 BC. Okay, so when you make actually tectonic subsidence correction, and again, this is a bit of a hypothetical correction, and a lot more comes out. Those of you who are familiar with differential scanning calorimetry, you might have done. So one is like at a constant heating rate, you keep on heating the material to study the properties of the material. But if you want to enhance the signal, like think of this as a sensitivity analysis, you If you have used it, you'll relate to it. Otherwise, just ignore this for next 30 seconds. But you have this constant heat rate, like you might say 5 degrees per minute, and the temperature keeps on going up into that crucible there. But you can also send another signal, which is very high and very low, very high and very low. In addition to this, it suddenly it gives the heat and takes it away, and gives the heat, takes it away, in addition to this 5 degree per minute being heated or something. And you try to bring out many additional nuanced information about that material. It's something like this. Even when hypothetical, just like in a differential scanning calorimetry, you don't know what signal it should be. You try different signals to see what you learn. Here they tried 1.1 millimeter per year, and actually it's telling us a lot more than the raw data actually showed us. Okay. Now, in order to even interpret this and make sense of it, you have to have the background knowledge. You have to have the context of Dholavira, and the context of Lothal, and the context of Krishna's Dwarka getting destroyed in 5525 BCE. How did you arrive at 5525 BCE? Not in some thin air, not just looking at some sea level and flood. We started with the Mahabharata text itself. That tells us 5561 BCE. That same text tells us to go for additional 36 years to arrive at the year 4 flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka. And then we are looking for corroborative evidence around the world. Okay. So even just so that I want you to understand this important point, their correction, their sensitivity analysis is based on a hypothetical rate of 1.1 millimeter per year. They don't know exactly what it would be. It may not necessarily be constant. The point is, actually, when they use that, much more additional information became available that we could relate to what we know from rest of the world, other additional empirical data, but also Shruti Pratyaksha Aitiyam Anumanam Chatushtayam. From our history, from Shruti, from Aitiya, okay? And multidisciplinary evidence, okay? Sedimentology evidence, oceanography evidence, climatology evidence, genetic evidence, it all beautifully comes together. That is solving the jigsaw puzzle. All right, one more. Again, beautiful, very interesting evidence. Look at the notification there, nomenclature. The rectangular boxes is the current study that we just looked at, last two graphs. Okay. Now they did a comparison of that with another study by Blum and others done in the Texas area. Okay, so not at the mouth of Mississippi. First thing, notice a very consistent behavior from the current study with the other study from the coast of Texas or central Texas. But something else I want to show you. Again, only 3 data points, unfortunately. Okay, unfortunately. And I'm going to show you how, if you are not savvy in terms of scientific acumen, Vijnana Buddhi, if you have not done the homework in understanding how to logically reason, how to draw proper inferences, and not fall into the trap, anyone can fool you. Okay. So I already gave you the warning. Okay. Now I'm going to do this to you just for a minute to show you how blind people are. And just they keep on saying, oh, somebji said something, Nileshji, what is your opinion? Well, I don't have opinion on idiots, but if you still bring what that person is saying, along with that person's evidence, then I can comment on it. So the very reason I would assume you are asking me something is because that person said something that disagrees, okay, with what I am asserting. In which case, since I'm asserting, which means I'm showing the background evidence, you cannot just bring the claim and say, Nileshji, what do you think? Well, I don't have a time to think about what the fools are claiming, okay? But if you bring some individual and the person's evidence, everyone out there is not a fool. So you bring the evidence, assuming they understand that the evidence needs to be presented, then we can discuss. Okay, just like this evidence here. These researchers, they presented their evidence and they are comparing with other evidence. But something I'm going to show you is like how one can be easily fooled. For example, as said, unfortunately, there are only 3 data points. There may be many, but at least in this research, they have presented only 3 for each of these 2 studies. Now, you know that 2 points can be used to define a line, in a simplistic plane, even the same single plane and so on. I'll not make it complicated from a geometry and 3-dimensional perspective. So I'm able to draw a line through these 2 points. Okay, notice I have not fooled you yet. Okay, I have drawn a line, through those corners of the rectangle, so I'm being very consistent. Now, there is another triangle or rectangle there bottom. So I need to connect that, so to understand when the sudden change of slope took place, the exactly same way I showed it to you, the data previously, from this study. Okay, so now if I do this, and if I take that intersection and connect it, guess what? It beautifully corroborates that 5525 BCE. Now let's do that to the other data from Central Texas. Okay, I draw a line. You can call it tangent. This is not a tangent because only 2 data points. If we had a multiple data points, we might have said there is a curve and we are drawing a tangent to it. Now, again, there is a 1 data point below. So if I connect that, and I'll say, oh, it beautifully again corroborates 5525 BCE. Now, guess what, guys? If you are convinced, well, great, thank you, because the experiment worked. Actually, as far as the line drawn through the 2 data points was fine and reasonable. But actually, I played a trick with you twice. When I drew this line and, forgive me, and this line here. Okay, the line with a much vertical slope, these 2 lines on the right, both for 2 different data sets. I just drew it, guys. Okay, I mean, I could have taken this line from this data point. I could have taken it here, or I could have taken it here. Ditto for this. From here, I could have taken it here. I could have taken it here, or I would have drawn straight up here to meet this line. I played a trick on you. See, to draw this line, I need at least 2 data points, and I don't have 2 data points. I only had 1 data point. Okay, now in my mind, the answer was there, right? What is the answer? 5525 BCE. Okay, so I just put the line there and I say, oh, let me connect this. I showed this as a demonstration. By the way, this is a phenomenal data, even with the 3 data points. What does it tell you? That, let me go back. Okay, here, that these 2 data points, even when connected, as I did it here, we definitely know that this data point, okay, corresponding to say 7,800, wherever that is definitely not going to fall on this line. Or when we did this second line, and now this data point possibly connecting to, again, similar thing, 7,600 BP or so, that is definitely not going to fall on this blue line either. So we know that between this 7,000, let's call it, what is that, 7,800 or something like this, and about like 6,900, again, very similar to the end limits that were shown by Graham Hancock and Glenn Milne for Dwarka. Here we are talking about southern United States. It's very consistent. So a sudden sea level rise did occur between those 2 data points. That we can say without actually drawing this line. However, me drawing these second set of lines here, okay, this was not scientifically correct. Okay, this was a jugaad. This was done to fool ordinary people. Remember? So 2 lines, I mean, at least we need 2 data points to draw a line. That rule was not followed here. Okay, so just keep that in mind. People will show some data to you. They would have a priori conclusion in their mind what they would like to prove. And if you choose to be naive, Okay. Basically, you are on a ride with them wherever they want to take you. All right, that's it. Quick summary. The evidence for the flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka due to sudden sea level rise in 5525 BC is found around the world. The delta formation at the mouth of rivers around the world corroborate this timeline of 5525 BC. Today we saw in the context of river Mississippi, but I have shown this for a red river in the ancient kingdom of Champa or modern day Vietnam. Exactly similar phenomenon, very consistent. Just notice the distance between these locations, geographically speaking, okay, from the southern part of United States to Vietnam, okay, to Dwarka, and then going up further north to places like Dogger Bank and so on. Different type of evidence, but a consistency is truly amazing. Comprehending variations in sea level rise or the exact timing of it requires knowledge and information about land subsidence, plus various methods and evidence employed to estimate the sea level rise. Specifically the magnitude of the sea level rise, but also the timing of sea level rise. We just looked at a few examples here today. The sea level is rising for the last 20,000 years. Very important point again, guys. And thus a corroboration of a specific catastrophic rise event with a specific historical event requires independent dating determination of the historical event. Now, if this is not done, what happens? This is what has happened with many pro-Indic researchers, pro-Indic Mahabharata dating researchers. Say, take the context of the Dwarka that we are looking at. Do you know what they have done? They will go to the seashore, say, think of Gujarat, okay, and some Dwarka area or wherever the location is suitable where they can dig. There is also that fallacy of, the individual, the drunkard looking for a lost coin, okay. The person is looking for a coin under a street light, and the cops comes and says, what are you looking for? And the drunkard says, oh, I'm looking for my lost coin. The cop says, where did you lose it? Where did you drop it? Or where did you lose it? Where it fell from your pocket? And he says, oh, that was 1 kilometer away. And then the cop says, so why are you looking for that coin here? And the drunkard says, well, because the light is better here. I mean, you see the fallacy of it, you see the humor of it. Something similar has also happened. This is not the main point of a blame, because of course you can only do the dig where it is possible with the budget you have and so on. But where they have created a massive disaster driven by naivety, okay, driven by possibly some other political pressures. I'm not aware of those, what exactly the pressures they had, but definitely the scientific naivety is very obvious, is that when they looked at, say, oceanography data or say the land subsidence data, any delta formation data, let's say, on the coast of Gujarat, and they found, oh, okay, this happened, say, 200 BCE, this happened 1000 BCE, this happened around 1500 BCE, and so on. Look at this bullet number 4. They immediately jumped and started saying, oh, this is Krishna's Dwarka. Yes, this is Krishna's Dwarka because I found a pot here. My dear friend, are you saying that Krishna was the only one who used the pot in Dwarka? Okay, this is the Karya Karana Bhav misunderstood, or either misunderstood or Karya Karana Bhav understood upside down, which is again misunderstood. Okay, so you don't just look for some flood evidence and start shouting in a foolish manner, Krishna's Dwarka and the flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka happened for that particular dated object or that particular dated level. Guess what? Sea level is rising for last 20,000 years. So if you want to connect a specific sea level rise, even a specific catastrophic sea level rise, because there is no one catastrophic rise event, there are multiple catastrophic rise events. Okay, CRE1, CRE2, CRE3, and there could be many more. Then the tsunamis and so on. But all of this data, you can only connect the dots with the actual historical event. And for that, you need independent dating of that historical event. And not just like suddenly find some evidence of a sea level rise, and in a very unscientific, illogical, and foolish manner and naive manner. I mean, this is not to give names to them. In fact, naivety is the biggest problem here, biggest sad story. Okay, out of naivety, somebody just jumping and saying Krishna's Dwarka, therefore, was flooded in 1500 BC, 2000 BC, 1000 BC, 200 BC. People have made that kind of naive claims. Okay, that happens because of this bullet number 4. So lesson here is, when 4 is not understood, academic and or archaeology fiasco and a resulting humor is the outcome. And when time permits, and if time permits, in future episodes of Shraddha and Pradnya, but also Dr. No Shorts, I will look at specific claims made by specific researchers, specific individuals, claiming some year far removed from 5525 BCE as the year for flooding and destruction of Krishna's Dwarka. But for today, this is where we will stop. I will see you soon in another episode of Shraddha and Pradnya or Dr. No Shorts. Namaskar.